The loader drops its bucket into a mountain of old brick and crushes straight through it, while an older man with a small trailer stands just outside the work zone and watches the pile disappear under the machine. The contractor notices the trailer and laughs. "You hauling this stuff home?" The old mason doesn't answer. He walks straight to the rubble, pulls one brick from the edge, turns it in his hands, and scrapes his thumb across the mortar still stuck to one side. Then he puts it back. He doesn't take another. Instead, he looks past thousands of loose bricks to the far end of the building, where one section of the old wall is still standing. And he starts walking toward it. "You want brick? Take it from the pile," the contractor calls. The mason stops near the standing section and looks up its length. "Not that pile. This section." The contractor glances toward the excavator. "That wall comes down today." The mason keeps studying it. Now the contractor walks over and points toward the loose brick already scattered beneath the wall. "Anything already down, take it. But you stay off the wall. Crew isn't waiting. That works for him." The mason crouches beside the fallen brick directly below the section and picks up two pieces that look almost identical. He turns them toward the daylight, checks the faces, the worn edges, the mortar still clinging to them. One goes beside his boot. The other goes straight back to the ground. He checks another, keeps it, another, leaves it. And now the pattern becomes obvious. He isn't collecting old brick. He's selecting it. Nothing from the giant rubble pile behind him goes into the trailer. Nothing from the other demolished sections gets a second look. Only brick that came from this one stretch of wall. A few pieces at a time, the trailer begins to fill. Then the loader finishes the pile behind him, turns across the site, and starts moving toward the section he has chosen. Back at his yard, the mason unloads the selected bricks onto a low work table. He takes one from the top, sets a short chisel against the old mortar, and gives it 2 light taps. The mortar breaks away. He scrapes the edge clean, turns the brick over, and checks the face. Still whole. He tries another, then a third. Soon 3 clean bricks sit in a row, their faces intact. Years of repairing old brickwork taught him that old walls rarely stay uniform. They get patched, rebuilt, and changed, sometimes one small section at a time. He reaches into the truck and brings over a single reference brick. He sets it beside the cleaned ones. Same general size, close color, similar wear along the face and edges. He loads the 3 samples back into the truck and drives across town. An old brick building is under restoration. One visible section of the exterior is still unfinished, waiting for brick that will blend with what is already there. He already knew about the job. That is why the demolition site caught his attention. He places the samples against the existing masonry. The restoration lead studies them, turns one in his hand, then holds it against the wall. "These are close." He checks the others. "Bring me a batch from that same section." The mason nods. He takes the samples, drives back home, and pulls the cover off the rest of his load. Now he starts on all of it. Now he starts on the full load, using the same light taps that worked on the samples. At first, everything looks right. The first 2 bricks clean up without damage and go straight onto the usable stack. Then one brick fights him. The mortar refuses to release, and when he adds a little pressure, part of the face breaks away with it. He tries a brick from deeper in the load, but this one cracks before the joint comes clean. Another survives the cleaning, yet the face is slightly different in color and wear from the samples the restoration lead approved. As he works farther through the load, the pattern becomes clear. The section may have looked like one old wall from across the site, but years of repairs have mixed older brick with later replacements and harder repaired joints. The usable stack grows slowly, while broken, scarred, and mismatched brick begins filling the other side of the table. Even when he slows down, the result stays the same. Finally, he puts the chisel down and looks at the 2 piles, the small clean stack he can use, and the much larger pile he cannot. Bringing home more brick the same way will only bring home more of the same problem. He doesn't waste more time on the broken pile. He clears the rejects away and keeps only the bricks that came clean and stayed close to the samples the restoration lead already liked. It isn't much compared with what he brought home, but it is the best material he has, so he loads it into the truck and drives back across town. At the restoration building, the lead takes the batch seriously this time. He sets one brick against the old wall, steps back to look at it, then tries another farther along the unfinished section. Brick after brick, the individual match holds up. The size is close, the color settles into the existing wall, and the worn faces do not stand out the way newer brick would. Then the lead steps back and looks across the entire open bay. "These work," he says, "but I need enough of the same look to carry this whole section." He points across the unfinished wall. "If that changes halfway through, you'll see the patch from the street." The mason looks from the bricks at his feet to the full stretch that still has to be closed. His first problem was finding brick that matched. Now he has a different one. The good bricks are right, but there are not enough consistent ones to carry the repair across one continuous visible section. Saving more random brick from the same demolition wall will not solve that. So when he returns to the demolition site, he does not go back to the rubble. He stops at the standing section, stays outside the crew's work zone, and studies the wall itself. From a distance, it looked uniform. Up close, the changes begin to show, subtle shifts in color, joint lines that break pattern, patches where the brick face changes, and longer bands where everything stays much more consistent. Those longer runs are what he needs. He follows them across the wall, course by course, then pulls out a scrap of paper and makes a rough sketch, marking where the consistent bands begin, where they stop, and which patched areas he wants to avoid. For the first time, he is no longer choosing a wall. He is choosing specific parts of it. Across the site, the demolition equipment finishes another section and begins repositioning toward his end of the building. The mason looks once more at his marks, then back at the wall. The brick he needs is still up there, and he is not allowed to touch it while the wall is standing. The demolition equipment moves into position at the standing section, and the mason stays well outside the work zone with the rough wall map still folded in his pocket. The excavator takes the wall down in several passes. Courses break apart as the section folds inward and crashes into the rubble, and when the dust clears, the clean bands and repaired patches he studied on the wall are scattered across the ground in pieces. Only after the machine backs away and the crew clears the area does the contractor let him approach. "Take what you need, but the loader clears this next." He heads first for the band he marked as his best source, but the fall has hit that area hard. Much of the run is cracked, while another part lies pinned beneath heavier debris he cannot safely move. So he leaves it and shifts to the next band on his map. Now he has to read the wall all over again, except the wall is lying on the ground. Individual bricks can look almost identical once everything is mixed, so he searches for short connected sections where the joint pattern and position still show which course they came from. He finds the first intact run and works the usable bricks free, adding them to the trailer. A second connected section lies nearby, and this one gives him more of the consistent faces and wear he was looking for. Behind him, the loader starts clearing debris from the opposite end of the site. Each pass removes another pile and brings the machine closer to what remains of his section. The mason keeps moving through the areas he marked, but the collapse has mixed repaired brick into the original runs. Instead of grabbing anything that looks close, he leaves the isolated pieces alone and concentrates on fragments whose position still tells him where they came from. The trailer finally begins filling with a much cleaner, more consistent batch. There is one mapped run left. At first he cannot find it. The area where it should have landed is buried beneath broken brick from one of the later repairs. He clears the loose material until part of the original course appears underneath, still connected closely enough for him to recognize where it came from. That gives him his last useful group. He loads the survivors, checks the ground once more, then steps clear. The loader moves in and pushes the remaining wall into the general demolition pile, mixing the repaired sections, broken courses, and everything he left behind. There will be no second trip to this wall. The mason looks at the trailer, then at the empty space where the section had been standing. This batch is all he has. He gets into the truck and drives back across town. At the restoration building, the lead goes straight to the trailer and starts checking the load, turning bricks over and setting the strongest ones together. This batch is noticeably more consistent than the first. The color stays closer, the faces carry similar wear, and fewer pieces stand apart from the rest. He still doesn't call it enough. Let's put some up. They move the first bricks to the scaffold and start at the open bay in the front wall. One goes into place, then another beside it, and the recovered brick begins forming an actual course instead of sitting on the ground as loose samples. The first few look right, but that is the same test they already passed before, so they keep going. The run extends farther across the opening, and the question changes from whether one brick matches to whether dozens of faces can sit together without the repair announcing itself. Partway through, the lead pulls one brick back out. Its face sits slightly different from the others, close enough by itself but obvious once it is surrounded by the cleaner run. The mason replaces it from the trailer, and the course continues. More of the opening closes. Now there is enough brick in the wall to judge the batch the way it will actually be seen. The two men climb down and walk away from the building until they are near the street. Then they turn and look back at the repair. From close range, a trained eye could still find where the old work ends and the new work begins. From here, the transition no longer jumps out. The color carries across the bay. The wear stays consistent. The recovered brick settles into the older masonry instead of reading like a separate patch. The lead keeps looking at it for a few seconds. That'll work. He points toward the rest of the open bay. Use this batch for the rest. They return to the scaffold, and the repair keeps moving. Course by course, the empty section gets smaller, while the bricks the mason pulled from one specific demolition wall continue across the face of the building. Only when the remaining gap is nearly closed does the story move back across town. The demolition site is already being cleared. The section he mapped is gone, and the brick he left behind has disappeared into the general rubble. If you had been standing there before that wall came down, would you have known which brick was worth saving? Tell me what you would have looked for. A few miles away, the batch he chose is already in the wall. From the street, you have to know where to look to find it.